Good morning, everyone. The Liberal government desperately wants we to go away. Oh my goodness, they want we to go away. And I'm sure the NDP is not very comfortable with this either. Here's Pierre Poilievre talking about how bad this really is. And this is bad. This is a bad scandal. It doesn't look good for the Liberals. Will they skate away from this? The problem is, it doesn't matter. If Justin Trudeau is held to account and made to resign or made to step down, step aside, whatever it is, everybody stays in place. Freeland walks in and well, here's the new boss, same as the old boss, right? It's the same. It's exactly the same thing, the same policies, and just a little bit more condescending, right? Can you imagine the purple dress and the head tilt all the time? the mom nagging all the time. Goodness me. Anyway, here's Pierre Poilievre. Here we go.
There are lots of unanswered questions about the WE scandal. Let's start with the very root question. Prime Minister says the whole purpose of this billion-dollar contract was to help young people get involved in charities and nonprofits, but there's already a program that's been doing that for 20 years. It's called the Canada Summer Jobs Program. He could have just given that program more money and resources and he would have been done. But instead, he outsourced that pre-existing program to a single organization without competition that had paid his family over $300,000 in the preceding years. He did not recuse himself, and of course it was impossible for him to recuse himself because he was the originator of this idea. He created it in the first place. He claims public servants told him there was no other way to...
Okay, I'm going to fast forward to 2 minutes into this because just to be succinct here. 2 minutes, here we go. There we go. Good enough, here we go.
...of that spending. And therefore, it is the duty of the Finance Committee to understand how this appalling conflict of interest was allowed to unfold. How is it possible that a Prime Minister who knowingly gave a billion-dollar sole source contract to an organization that had paid his family over $300,000? We need answers to these questions. Tomorrow at noon, we have a deadline to submit all of our witnesses in the Finance Committee's study into the WE scandal. I'm announcing today that I will be adding Justin Trudeau's name to the list of witnesses. I will be calling on him to appear and testify under oath after being sworn in.
So there you go. The Conservatives are calling for the Prime Minister to appear before the Ministerial Committee. And not just the Prime Minister. Global News is reporting that Mr. Morneau will be added to the list too to testify on the WE charity controversy. What Mr. Poilievre was saying was that not only did Mr. Trudeau not recuse himself from the decision, he was the architect of the whole idea behind WE. The government was asked to fund students and they said no, instead we're going to give this $1 billion to WE. This is a bad scandal. This is a really, really bad scandal. Here is the National Post talking about this. Conservatives say police should be called in to investigate WE charity. Calls for independent review of the Liberal document giving a sole source contract to the WE organization intensified Friday, with the Conservatives demanding police step in and the NDP asking the Ethics Commissioner to add the Finance Minister to the list of those he's investigating. The Conservatives say they want a criminal investigation into the government's decision to let WE run a $900 million program for student volunteers. Through an ethics investigation into Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's already underway, new facts add to the seriousness of the issue. Conservative ethics critic Michael Barrett says, Michael Barrett, sorry, not Michelle, Michael Barrett. And we're going to see Michael Barrett in just a minute. He's here. So apologies for getting your name wrong, sir. Michael Barrett says, the revelation that $350,000 in cash was paid by this organization to immediate members of Justin Trudeau's family, that organization that he awarded a sole source contract, $1 billion contract to, that revelation raises the need for police to take a look at it, he said. Ethics Commissioner Mario Dion had announced a week before that he'd probe whether Trudeau broke conflict of interest laws. The Conflict of Interest Act calls on a holder of public office, including a minister, to, quote, recuse himself or herself from any discussion, debate, or vote on any matter in respect of which he or she would be in a conflict of interest. And it describes a conflict of interest as a situation where an officer an office holder, quote, exercises an official power, duty, or function that provides an opportunity to advance his or her private interests or those of his relatives or friends, or to improperly further another person's private interests. Yeah. I mean, that all fits there, right? He should have recused himself. This is 1 minute, 46 seconds. This is very worth your watch time. This is Michael Barrett, and he's tweeting this out, and he's an MP. And he says, when it comes to scandals involving Justin Trudeau, some journalists call balls and strikes. Then there are Justin's journos. You probably didn't see this clip on the news. This is funny. The whole setup for this, like, the really important part is the end. But the whole setup is hilarious because of the way the reporter slants the question. She slants it like the Conservatives are the ones who have done something wrong. And Barrett says, like, you know the Liberals are in government, right? Like, they're the guys who are making the decisions here. It's quite funny. And if you're a political kind of not like me, this kind of stuff makes you laugh. It made me laugh. Okay, here we go. We're watching the whole clip.
I think Canadians are wondering about sole source contracts in entirety. I mean, the Conservatives have come under fire as well for sole source contracts. When we talk about Davy shipyards in the past, does the government...
You know that the Liberals have been in government for 5 years,
yes.
right? Oh, okay.
Yes, but does there need to be a rethink on the way that sole source contracts from any government are delivered, are chosen? Does there need to be a rethink on all of this?
Yeah, certainly any individual that has direct dealings with an organization, they should recuse themselves from any consideration, sole sourced or otherwise. And having a conversation about sole sourcing contracts and cracking the history books and taking a look at what happened a decade ago, perhaps. Might be an excellent distraction that the Prime Minister desperately wants, but we have a situation where not only did we have a contract that was awarded, we have a sole source contract worth $1 billion, a program that was created out of thin air in parallel to a program that's already being delivered and is underfunded. We called for funding for the Canada Summer Jobs Program to be doubled. The government said no. They found $912 million and gave it to a Trudeau and Liberal friendly firm. So is there an opportunity for us to take a look at sole source procurements? I think that's one of many things that Canada's Parliament could look at when it's not shuttered by the NDP and the Liberals. But today, it's essential that the connection between Justin Trudeau, his failure to recuse himself from these conversations, and the awarding of this contract are given the full force of sunlight so that we can see what's going on.
Oh, my microphone didn't want to turn back on. The full force of sunlight to see what's going on. There was a lot of booms at the end of that clip, right? He was saying, like, we don't want to have Justin Trudeau to be able to get away with underfunding a student jobs program while funding a Liberal-friendly firm. The student jobs program is something you would expect funding for, right? Student jobs, sure, go ahead. But paying students to volunteer online to creating exercise programs for old people. Yeah, who needs expertise, right? Who cares? So yeah, I would love to see the documentation that the cabinet got to see when coming to this conclusion. And it's interesting that Garneau and a few other ministers have indicated that they were not aware of the status of payments to Justin Trudeau's family when cabinet made the decision. So more interesting is what it signals. A couple of cabinet ministers have responded by saying, I can't tell you that because of cabinet confidentiality. And others have responded with, no, I didn't know that. Mark Garneau is one of those respondents who says that they weren't aware. And having high-placed cabinet members indicating that they don't care what the PMO or the Prime Minister think by responding that way and not the pattern of, I can't speak to that because of cabinet confidence, that's really interesting. Just that action alone, doesn't matter what he says, just the fact that it's outside of the standard, can't talk about that because of cabinet confidence. That's interesting. It's notable, really. Like, people should be paying attention. And this is a big scandal. Jody Wilson-Raybould was a big scandal. The DPA on SNC, right? That was a big scandal all by itself too, right? Just giving the DPA, the Deferred Prosecution Agreement, which they gave in everything but name, right? Like, slap on the wrist, a quick trial, nothing too big here. And they just got a big government contract in Alberta, right? So back to business as usual. Canadians accepted it, no problems at all. Trudeau thought that this would be a popular program, right? Ride the coattails of the Kielburger brothers. Everybody's happy to give money for volunteering, weirdly, but it didn't work out that way. And this is a big scandal. So I don't know if this is big enough to take down the Liberals. I don't know if this is enough because, as I said, the government, the other parties are in no position to fight an election at this point in time. None. No position at all. The NDP's bankrupt. I know I talked about this yesterday. NDP's bankrupt. The Conservative Party is leaderless. The PPC is missing some fundamental key points that should have been and should be set up. And the Green Party is a joke, leaderless as well. And Elizabeth May's personality cult is going to be running roughshod over everything. I posted a story about that yesterday. If you didn't read it, go read it. It's interesting. So, I mean, there's no party that's in position to fight the Liberals' hold, but people might be sick of Justin Trudeau. But then you've got Chrystia Freeland, right? So it's like, well, I mean, do you like her better? Really? No? Okay. And I mean, that may take the Liberals down. That may, having to run an election with Chrystia Freeland as the face of the Liberals, that might do it. But I don't think this will do it. I don't think this scandal will take them down totally because of the disarray of the other parties, right? Really. And that's just what I'm seeing from up here in my garage, you know, with my binoculars and my internet. Who knows? I could be wrong. Who knows? But we're in a very, very a political desert with not an obvious way out because of so many people. If you add up the NDP, the Greens, and the Liberals, a lot of people are supportive of those policies, regardless of Justin Trudeau's missteps and his cronyism and his out and out. Well, I mean, the problematic things that he does daily, right? Like the dancing, all of it. Aside from all of that, right? People support the Liberal Party, and terrible economic policies, terrible social policies, backhandedly claiming that other people are racist. These are things that the government engages in, and then people say, "Yeah, I'm on their side. You're a racist." And they feel good about it. This is how politics works, I guess. And I mean, what are you going to do, right? It's a big scandal. I don't know what's going to take down the government. Here's another piece to this scandal. Remember how I said Mr. Morneau is implicated? His kids have jobs at We. He's appeared at We. And here is in 2017, 2018, We Charity built a brand new learning center in Toronto Centre. The Member of Parliament for Toronto Centre is Bill Morneau, Minister of Finance. Big coincidence, isn't it? Isn't it? He didn't tag me in this, but I saw it. So I thought, ooh, scoop. Because, you know, CTV News is not reporting this. It's interesting. I don't know if it's has anything to do with one another. Who knows? But man, isn't it interesting? Here's another little weird wee thing. Abandoned decrepit Scarborough mansion sells for $3.45 million. And this is from January 2019. The new owners paid a cool $3.45 million for a shell of a house in a home outside Toronto's downtown core. And the house is quite nice if you read about this. It says the estate, originally registered to Christine, doesn't matter, was seized by creditors after bankruptcy. The property was originally purchased for $1.95 million in 2006. In an earlier listing of April 2009, the asking price was $5.5 million. That's really a bargain price, said Royal LePage agent Norman Gutterow. It's hard to find a property that big overlooking Lake Ontario. It's a massive piece of property, and the views are spectacular. Gutterow estimates that the original owners put up to $1.5 million to build the existing steel-beamed shell structure before construction stopped. Land registry documents first indicated that the new buyer was Frederick Kielburger. That's also the name of famed Toronto child rights activist Craig and Mark Kielburger's father. The duo are founders of We Day, but Fred Kielburger's wife, Teresa, told the Star in an email exchange that they were not the owners of the home, and Fred Kielburger's name was on the registry in error. She said the home had, however, been purchased by a relative and that her husband helps him where he can with lots of support. He fixes up old houses, rents others. After being notified by the Star, Kielburger notified the registrar of the error, and the property was transferred in November to a numbered company. The sole director of the company is James Paul Altilia. Altilia, a nephew of the Kielburgers, said in an email exchange with the Star that, quote, "I do real estate on the side. I haven't decided on anything regarding 4 Birchmount." Isn't that I mean, how many millions of dollars did the We Foundation increase their real estate holdings through period 2013 to 2019? Isn't it just, I mean, it's so coincidental. Something to look into, you know, if you're into looking into that kind of thing. Anyway, here's another We block, I think, another plank that says we is probably going to be in some trouble in the coming years. This is not a great look for them. And I mean, people in education don't like scandal necessarily. And so giving money to a scandalous corporation, maybe not so good. Maybe not so good. So here's Manitoba. Education gave $1.1 million to WE since 2015. The Manitoba government has provided more than $1 million to the WE organization over the past 5 years. Manitoba Education has provided WE schools with $1.1 million in funding since 2015 to support and enhance programs and services to Manitoba schools, teachers, and students. A spokesman for Education Minister Kevin Gortizan, that's hard to say, said in an email late Friday. The spokesman said funding to WE School is reviewed annually. At a press conference earlier on Friday, Finance Minister Scott Fielding said he had not discussed the future WE organization funding with his cabinet colleagues in light of the Federal Ethics Commissioner's probe into Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's potential conflict of interest in the awarding of sole source contract to WE. Yeah, I mean, this whole thing is going to affect the operations of this charity. It is going to be questioned by levels of government because they fund this thing too. And it is interesting to note the cronyism. And what else, if it's that rotten, that obviously, maybe something else is going on. Maybe there's more. Maybe, who knows? I have no idea. But there's going to be pause. There's going to be review. And this will impact these decisions, these funding decisions. So, man, really going to be interesting. Ontario is going to be moving into stage 3. Interesting. Daycares are opening up. Schools should be opening up. Although I've seen part-time school being floated, I think that's a dumb idea. I think that's a terribly silly idea, especially in light of the number of cases and the number of cases for children. Very low, very low. So I mean, I don't know what stage 3 looks like yet. They're unveiling the plans today. Maybe they're unveiling them right now. Now, probably not. It's 1:00 probably press conference for Doug. But that's where we're at. They're looking at opening things up. The continued decline of this is as expected. And so here we go. And who knows? Maybe we'll be back to normal by like Halloween. But I fear the fear merchants in our media are going to see a flu season and see they could restart this engine. I hope they don't do that. And the last story for this morning, I was going to lead with this one, but I thought it's international and just kind of the kowtowing to the mob. The Edmonton Eskimos did a review, and they asked the Indigenous people near to them what they thought of the name, and they used that in their review, and they decided to not change their name. Okay, fair enough. And the Washington Redskins have done the same. And here's a comment on Twitter. And the difference between the Washington Redskins and the Eskimos is the Redskins have decided to change their name. They're going to change it. They're no longer using it, except they used it in this press release. Which is funny. Totally pointed out on Twitter. That's not my observation. But I mean, like, I saw it, and I saw the top, and I said, like, that's a weird thing to use on the press release that you're not using the name anymore. Yes, us, the Redskins, we're not using that anymore. Yeah. I just thought it was funny. But I feel the same way I felt about the Aunt Jemima cancellation and the Uncle Bed's cancellation. I feel like when you remove those voices, I don't think this is discriminatory. It's celebratory, right? It's respecting and keeping the images and the history alive to a certain extent. And that's not just my opinion. Here's Jeff. I don't know who Jeff is, but he tweeted this, and I thought, yeah, that's pretty close. That's pretty accurate. So he says, bowing down to the mob in response to the Redskins changing their name. Pretty soon there will be no mention of Native Americans in pop culture, and they'll be forgotten, when in reality they were celebrated for decades in name and logo on these prestigious sports teams with great history. This prestigious sports team. Oh no, it does say teams with great history. Celebrated, not disrespected. I think that's a good point to make. And this cancel culture, we have to change everything about our history to line up with how this small vocal group feels now is folly. I think that we are going to pay. We're paying for it already. We're paying for it right now. There are histories being erased that should inform children growing up of the dangers of communism, the dangers of totalitarianism, and not Donald Trump's totalitarianism, not the Twitter mob's version of these events, but the reality of these things. How bad communist China can be, right? There are things that have happened in this world and that are currently happening in this world, that people in the West believe aren't, right? Slavery is a good example. There's modern day slavery, and there's very many layers of it. And that's a scary thing. It's a scary thing to know. And all of these protests, these Black Lives Matter, these gender equality, all of these things, they're not addressing any of the really big major problems that are happening in the world. All they're doing is destabilizing currently stable governments that are actually trying to help those things in the world, right? And to help fix those things in the world if they possibly can. But you can't go into another country and spread freedom, because like your version of freedom may not be their version of freedom, right? You have to choose. That's why you can't just walk in and say, Venezuela, stop this communist stuff. Like, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work that way, right? The whole world is not set up for that. We have countries for a reason, and if we didn't have countries, if we had one government in say the UN, right? That wouldn't be better than what we've got now. It wouldn't be more fair. It wouldn't be more egalitarian or more representative of your local needs or more responsive or faster. It would be worse in every possible way, every single way that you could imagine. It would be worse. So I don't know why we're gleefully erasing our history. I don't know why we're gleefully recasting things that are supposed to be celebrating things as disrespect. If that's the feeling of the people that the Redskins consulted, then that's one thing. But I think that enthusiastically embracing the erasure of our past is a very, very big mistake. And letting a small vocal group do it on our behalf is an even bigger mistake. And I don't know how to stop it. I don't know what we can do to stand up and say no. But I'm saying this is happening. It's happening in real time. We're watching it. And what can you do? We're going to be accountable to our kids for the choices we're making, if you have kids. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. And have a wonderful, wonderful day. Really.